Too bad. It's so special that people are live and giving feedback. Thank you. Okay, so for all these wonderful people, Amir and Fred, we're going to give a quick synopsis of what we were just speaking about. Thank you all for the people who are in person here to listen again. A quick review of what we were talking about. And then we will move forward. So Parakid Gimel, here we're talking about Parakid Gimel, and we're trying to review what the Alter Rebbe is talking about when he says that a Beinoni is a person who is swayed by his instincts. And the Alter Rebbe reaches for the Gemara, where the Gemara talks about Beinoni, Rasha, and Tzaddik, and he says it's not by chance that the Gemara says the word Shaiftan, a judge, and describes that it says in the wording Beinoni Zev Zeh Shaiftan. The idea is that a Beinoni is experiencing a level of judgment all the time, and the Gemara doesn't say that a Moshel, right, a ruler is ruling over the Beinoni. It doesn't say that there is a king who has dominance over the Beinoni. It says the word Shaiftan. And the reason why the Alter Rebbe is using this wording is because a judge gives his ruling, but he doesn't have dominance. He doesn't, even like in any sort of democracy or government, there's usually someone who gives the ruling, and then he has like a police force to enforce the ruling. We're not saying that there is both of that together. We're saying that he has a judgment. And it's important for us to remember that, the Alter Rebbe is saying, because it's not a final ruling with no space for anything beyond. The Yetzer Hara, the person who is being the Yetzer Hara, who is the voice of judgment here, who's weighing in for the Beinoni constantly, all the time, is telling us what he wants. He's putting his plug in. He's trying to sway the city to come to his side. And again, it's just a voice. So this is what we were getting to before in person, is when you're feeling an intense experience, you're feeling very passionate about something, you're feeling swept up with anger, you're feeling like you don't want to think twice, you just want to eat the food and not make a bracha. It's instinctive, it just comes to you. And then afterwards, you look at that action, you say, how could I have done that? Right? How could I have just been so senseless or thoughtless or whatever it is? We have to look back at that experience and say, it's a very human experience, and you are just a human being experiencing your Nefesh Bahamas, who is a Shefet, who is putting in his ruling and saying, hey, I want you to take a bite out of this cake without making a bracha. I think this is what you should do. But he's not enforcing it. It's not a final ruling. He doesn't have dominance over your city. He's just offering that as a judgment. This is what you should do. It's very intense. It's very forceful. It's very authoritative. It's compelling. But it's not as if he has the final say. And that's a very important piece to remember. And it's beautiful. All the Alter Rebbe is really highlighting that. Again, showing us how deeply in tune the Alter Rebbe was to the real human person's experience. The Alter Rebbe obviously is a tzaddik, but in writing this Sefer Shel Beinanim, he's completely attuned to the idea that the shame that you experience in thinking that, I'm instinctive, I don't even think twice, that could even drown you even more. That's just the voice of the Yetzer Hara having even more of an effect, trying to take dominance over the city, which is your body, your human experience. So every time we feel a strong push towards resentment, grudges, anxiety, despair, self-pity, worthlessness, all of these are the voice of the Nefesh Bahamas. And they feel very compulsive sometimes, and they feel very intense sometimes. And again, I'm not trying to say that people don't necessarily need outside help outside of the Tanya to help them deal with deep depression or anxiety or things like that. That's not what I'm trying to say. But what I am trying to say is that the root of those things is coming from the Nefesh Bahamas. It has no source in godliness. It has no source in the Nefesh Elokis. And it's an important piece to remember that it's just a voice. It's not you. It's something outside of you that's trying to influence you. Now, what is you, the deepest part of yourself, is your nefesh elokis. And that is whole and it is pure and it is in no way affected by the sins that have been performed. It's not affected by the judgment of the Yetzer Hara, the voice of the Nefesh Bahamis. It's not swayed by it. It is calm and steady and perfect, always. So in the last chapters, we were talking about how do we function when we have this really strong judgment coming from the Yetzer Hara, coming from that very strong impulsive or compulsive desire to just be self-gratifying? How do we work with that? Fine, now we know where it's coming from, but it feels in ways like it's stronger than us. So what do we do? So last time when we were together, we spoke about how if we thought about, let's say, a specific thing that we struggle with, a specific challenge, and we really painted it in the light that we see it. So, for example, the first example that comes to me is this book. I believe the author's name is Alan Carr, but I don't know if it's really that is his name. He wrote a book, How to Stop Smoking. Yeah, right? Okay. Oh, he has a few? Okay. So there you go. I know the How to Stop Smoking one. So I never actually read it, but I know the push behind it. A huge aspect there is identifying with smoking, right? So he paints a picture of the way a smoker looks at smoking, how it's cool, how it makes him or her feel relaxed, the imagery of like in the morning with a cup of coffee, and like everything about it is like so appealing. There's so many nuances and delightful details that appeal to the smoker to reach for that cigarette. And what he'll do, again, I didn't read the book, but I know just from hearsay a lot of what he does in this book. And if you read through the book, it's supposed to get you till the very last chapter, which is like the last chapter. You're supposed to read the chapter with your last cigarette that you've ever had. He's like walking through this process of quitting. And the idea is that all throughout this process, he basically is disproving to you how amazing it is and how the details of how attractive it is to you. And so you get to the very end where there's this chapter of it doesn't feel appealing any longer. It's not something that you wish or you desire any longer. In the end, it becomes something that's disgusting to you. Okay? That's, I believe, the understanding behind the book. And if you can have a perfect clarity in your mind about this specific challenge, just like with this book, like smoking, and seeing it as unthinkable, seeing it as something that is repulsive to you in the end. So let's say you looked at this challenge and you have just this absolute clarity of, I don't want to associate with that anymore. That part of myself that maybe I used to struggle with, it's not something that is even me any longer. I don't even want to give it credence. It's not something that I even want to entertain, right? So in your mind, it's so clear that something that maybe passion is leading you towards or instinct is leading you towards, you don't even want it any longer. That would be the first step. That's what we spoke about last time, where if it's unthinkable to you, if you gave yourself a second to think about, what you want out of life and what you value and what you don't, you would be able to take a step back from that challenge or from that activity or from that tendency and say, this is not something I even want in my life anymore. And to perform it is unthinkable. Now that I really stopped to think about it, I have so much resistance towards it. It's not even something that I want to even think about. That's easier, right? That's something that if we just give ourselves a moment, we can gain clarity and then from there move forward. Then there's parts of our lives where it's very tricky because sometimes we'll think, hey, this challenge is permissible, right? So a funny example that I thought of was yesterday I was walking on Pico and I see a mother and her child walking towards the street, but not quite going into the street. And then her probably 1.5 or 2-year-old ran into the street. And I'm laughing now, but it's not funny. She just grabbed the first thing she can get to grab him from going into the streets, which ended up being his hair. And, it was a little bit shocking, but that's just what you got to do if your child's running into the streets. No judgment whatsoever on this woman. So, on the one hand, you're looking at this behavior and you say, that's completely unthinkable. I would never pull my child's hair like that and just grab them like that. That's awful. And then circumstance and situation, and this specific example, you see, okay, well, in certain areas, that's a perfectly good thing to do to save a child's life or to prevent, God forbid, you don't know exactly who's coming. She didn't necessarily see a car coming, but she had to prevent an imminent danger, right? So let's say in an example like this, when you first look at the behavior, it's unthinkable. But then you take a second look at it, and in certain ways, you might think like, wait, that might be justified in certain circumstances. And we have that in so many areas of our life where, in certain circumstances, you should say something about somebody else that maybe is negative because you're going to protect the people involved, or, someone's life is in danger, or property is in danger. You have to ask a Rav, obviously. But there's a lot of gray in our lives. Not everything is so black and white. Do we have this absolute clarity all the time around? So a lot of the time, the challenges that we're faced with, we have somehow justified them. And even if we try to make it and put it into that category of this is unthinkable, I would never engage with this kind of behavior, a lot we would engage with because it's not entirely unthinkable. And that means that not just our hearts have been swayed by the Yetzer Hara or the Nefesh Baham's voice, that judgment of, hey, you should do this. This is the self-gratifying thing that you should be doing right now. Now our minds too have been polluted. And it doesn't mean to say that it's a lost cause, but what it is saying is that we have that voice very strongly now in our intellect. And we work through our intellect. All of our actions come ultimately from our minds. Our thoughts create our emotions, which create our experience. This is the way we live our life. So everything comes from the brain, right? Your actions, your emotions, the way you perceive things, your views on the world, what you value, what you don't, it's all coming from your head. Even if it feels sometimes like it's just your emotions because it's so lightning fast, it's really coming from your mind. So now if your mind, which is actually the source where the Nefesh Elokis is, that's the advantage that the Nefesh Elokis has over the Nefesh Bahamis. If your mind is already now polluted, what are you going to do? Like how are we supposed to function now? Things are not unthinkable any longer. They are very thinkable. We've done this proactively. So here the Alter Rebbe says, yes, you can engage with Mayach Shalat al Lev, so actively thinking about how you want your thoughts to direct your life. And sometimes you may win and sometimes you may not because it's been a struggle. So here the Alter Rebbe says, this is why Hashem created us with the Nefesh Elokis that has an advantage over the Nefesh Bahamis. Even if that's not your very human experience, you feel like what you're much more in tune with is your Nefesh Bahamis, that voice of self-gratification. Really, the way that Hashem created the world and created human beings is that really the Nefesh Elokis is stronger than the Nefesh Bahamis. And the example he gives is, for example, if you walk into a dark room or if you're in a cave and the darkness is heavy and it's so strong and it feels so compelling and it feels like you can't move forward, you can't see the light. And if you just strike one tiny match, it can light up the entire room. Light naturally dispels darkness because darkness itself is not an actual creation, it's just the lack of light. As soon as you bring light to the room, and as long as there's definition for that light, it immediately dispels all of that darkness. So the Alter Rebbe uses this example because it's such a great example to show how Hashem created the Nefesh Bahamis within us and within our minds that it can have an advantage over the passion of the heart. And yet, still, we might be struggling with the concept of Mayach Shalat al Lev, where the mind controls the heart. So what to do then? The Alter Rebbe says, then we have to have something called submission. We have to dive into Hashem. We have to let Hashem know that we can't do this alone. Yes, he gave us a nefesh elokis. Yes, he gave us that empowerment to be able to handle the struggle. It's not like we're saying that Hashem didn't give us the tools to be able to handle the struggle, but we can't do it alone. We need his help. We need his guidance. We need him to turn to hold us, to really hold us through this challenge. And I kind of want to break away from this. And again, this is not what the Alter Rebbe talks about. This is me kind of expounding on the concept of surrender. What does it mean to surrender? The Alter Rebbe definitely talks about the concept of bittul. We also spoke about in previous classes. There it's more translated as nullification, but it's the same thing. It's a surrendering of yourself. And I think in order to make this class really practical and also to kind of apply it to what we're talking about here and what we're experiencing right now, I think it's a very apropos thing to talk about. What is surrender? What does it mean to really surrender yourself to Hashem's will, to be mevatel yourself to Hashem's will? So it's an unfortunate thing that in the English language, surrender is actually a word that's very much associated with war, and then the side that surrenders actually loses the war. That's not the way it's actually the concept that's illustrated that I want to bring to you here. Yes, we're having a war here, right? There's a war over the city. But when we're surrendering, it's not like we're losing and hanging up a white flag to the winner, which is the Nefesh Bahamas. It's actually the opposite. The opposite is when we're surrendering our mental, physical, human self, and we're saying, Hashem, I can't do this alone. I need to let go of my humanness here and say, I need something greater than me to come in and help me with this. So it's almost like, imagine the army, right? Let's say a group of Navy SEALs, right? They have a mission. If there was one Navy SEAL who said, I am the reason we have this mission, and I'm going to be the one to fulfill this mission, and it's all on me, they will, by definition, be unsuccessful. Because the greatness of a team, the greatness of a unit, like a specialized unit, like the Navy SEALs, is that they have incredible teamwork. And what is teamwork? It's a surrendering of yourself to a greater good, a greater performance on the part of everyone together. When we work together as a unit, then we're bringing all of ourselves together, all of our greatness together, but it's not like the ego is getting involved. It's a surrendering of my unique self to make space for our collective whole, which is much stronger than just me. And in the same way, that's what's happening here when we're saying, I'm going to put aside that this is a struggle that is shameful for me, that is embarrassing. I hate the fact that I'm struggling with this. I hate myself for struggling with this, right? All of those thoughts, which are all just ego, and saying this is not about me. This is about service of the Eibishter, serving Hashem, and how I am placed in this world to serve God for a specific purpose. And the more I could attune myself to that, right? So I'm letting go of my ego. I'm saying I'm not perfect. There's no way that I can do this on my own. Is letting go of the embarrassment, is letting go of the shame. They're saying, I can't do this on my own. I always talk about it takes a village to raise a child, like that concept. For me, that was something that was very hard to admit. As a mother who thought that she was everything for her children and nobody else had anything else to share or offer, to me, I always wonder, like, how do people say that? Because I thought that I'm everything. And it took me years to realize that I was actually receiving help from, like, let's say my mother or my sister or from the wider community or schools, right? The chinuch of my children. But I wasn't even admitting the fact that I was actually receiving from them and channeling into this child. It wasn't just all me. It was a collective, it's a community effort to raise my child here. You know, a friend of a friend who said something to my child and it impacted her, him. All of us are having an impact on one another. And it is foolhardy for me to tell myself that I am my child's everything. We all have an impact on that child, right? It literally takes a village. And as a village, right, as a community, we could directly impact that child for the negative or for the positive. We all, as adults, can recall, if we gave ourselves 3 minutes, certain instances that happened in our childhood or in, let's say, the realm of chinuch. So, as a child, a certain teacher you had that bolstered you, that boosted you, that made you more of a person that you are now, and some who, chas v'shalom, maybe did the opposite. Maybe there was a teacher who didn't realize what she was doing, didn't realize what she was saying, and that had a negative impact on you. Or it could also be the school system, the classroom setting, the social experience that you had that either built you or had a negative impact on you. It had something. And we all, in ways, have to admit, and that admitting is an act of surrender. And I know for myself, it very much took a long time to admit, to let go, to open up, to create space for something more. Take it even to, like, let's say, a relationship between you and your friends. There is a process of admitting that we need other people to help us feel comfortable. We need other people to help us feel more spiritual. When she listens to me describe something aggravating that happened in my life, I feel better. That means that I've opened myself up for somebody else's contribution, and I could not do it alone. Her support is everything to me. When my husband comes home and brings home a Dvar Torah to the Shabbos table, when my husband comes home and brings, I don't know, financial aid or his contribution to my children when he is parenting them in his certain way, that is him directly impacting me. And the more that we could see that there is a space for surrender outside of this challenge, the more we get used to surrendering in general. So the more that I make this a habit of, I could admit that I'm not perfect. I could admit that he has an impact on me. She has an impact on me. The community has an impact on me. It affects me. It affects what I do every day. The more I could surrender in general all throughout my life in the 24 hours of my day, then I come to a specific challenge, like the one we're all thinking about right now, this specific thing that I just can't seem to get over. Then I could channel the surrender that I've been doing outside of this challenge all the time. And I could kind of weave it into this challenge and say, Hashem, I need to create space here for you to help me, to aid me, to work through this challenge. I know I can do it. You've given me the tools. And I need to surrender a little bit more, open myself up a little bit more to your help. And what does that look like, right? What does it look like to open yourself up a little bit more? There are so many avenues that might be opening up to you that you don't even realize. I always think of that very famous mashal, or it's probably a really mashal, of a man who's on top of a roof, and there's a chas v'shalom, there's a terrible flood, and the water's creeping up, and a boat comes by. I'm probably messing up this mashal, but a boat comes by and they say, come join us. We're saving people. Come onto our boat. And he says, no, I'm going to rely on the Eibishter. And then, helicopter comes by and says, we're saving people. Just climb up our rope. Give me your hand. He says, no, I'm going to wait till the Eibishter really saves me. I have emunah b'tachin. And the idea is that the Eibishter is sending him help, right? He's sending him help, but the man is just too unwilling to admit that this is a form of help from the Eibishter. So the more that we open ourselves up and surrender in general outside of this challenge, the more we get used to pushing aside our ego and admitting that and being open to all forms of help and contribution and support, the more that we'll be able to see it even in this specific challenge. How many times can we think of a story where we could have missed the hashgacha pratis, we could have missed the hand of God in our lives if we just hadn't, if we didn't open up our eyes, but Baruch Hashem we did and we noticed it. There's so many instances of hashgacha pratis, and sometimes we miss it. Yesterday, I was supposed to make a meeting with someone, and Hashem actually told my ways to go a different way, and I didn't listen, and I went straight into traffic in a terrible accident. and I got stuck for 45 minutes, like stuck in traffic. And for me, anytime I feel stuck, it's very triggering. Doesn't feel good to feel stuck. And whenever now that I know that word is playing in my head, I know that it's not true because the Eibishter doesn't put us in places where we are stuck. Hashem puts us in spaces where there are challenges, and there are also reasons for us to be in that challenge. And there's an opening somewhere for me to see that I'm supposed to be navigating towards something here. So I started looking around, like I'm in this car and my windows are open. Like, is there someone here I'm supposed to be helping? Is there some reason that I'm here for 45 minutes on the 14, not moving? I didn't find anybody that I was able to help, but there was something there. There's some reason for me to be on the 14 for 45 minutes. I don't know why, but I wasn't stuck. And the more that I could open myself up, maybe the reason is that I'm supposed to be sharing this with you right now, right? I had that experience yesterday. It's fresh on my mind, and I'm sharing that with you right now. I don't know. I don't need to know all the answers. But the idea is that if I'm feeling stuck, it's ego. It's the voice of the Nefesh Bahamis, and it's not the voice of the Nefesh Elokis. The Nefesh Elokis has a calm, soothing, solution-based experience. It has the voice of Hashem, where all possibilities are open. The infinite is open to you. That's the voice of the Nefesh Elokis. If you're feeling stuck, it means that it's the wrong voice that you're listening to. And the more that we open ourselves up and we experience that level of surrender, then I'll be able to experience all the pathways that Hashem is offering me, solutions or gateways towards where I am supposed to grow. And that requires a humbleness. It also requires a piece of you having a lot of confidence, right? Sometimes we turn to ego because it helps us like justify things and make us feel more powerful and make us feel good about ourselves. Someone who is in a state of surrender, it's not like the way the world perceives it, that you gave up and you lost the battle. It's actually so much more powerful to be able to surrender. You're able to say, I don't have to justify myself. I can stand. I don't feel like I'm less than if I make space for somebody else. It's empowering. And in order for me to open myself up to that empowerment, I also have to have a shtel. I have to be able to stand and be confident to be able to put myself aside for something greater and more and stronger than myself. Weak people are too scared to do that. Weak people say, I can't push myself aside to let something else in. It's too scary to open up. It's vulnerable, it is, but it's not weakness. It's powerful to be able to open yourself up for something more. And so I just want to bring in those three pieces. It requires a humbling, it requires a self-confidence, and it also requires a level of trust that the Eibishter is there for you, that the people around you are there for you, and their contribution is going to help you get somewhere greater. So the reason why I'm bringing this in, I think it's so important to really concentrate on this, is because we're in times right now where we're experiencing a lot of judgment. We're put on a stage. The world is looking at us right now. There's lots of voices, and we don't have to listen to any of those voices. We just have to listen to the one true voice. And the Eibishter's voice, which is the same voice as our neshama, the same voice as Torah, says the same thing. Do a mitzvah, do the next right thing, learn Torah, strengthen your concentration on the Eibishter is running the world. And we don't have to prove ourselves. We don't have to justify our existence to the world. We don't have to be embarrassed. None of that. We can experience a deep surrendering collectively. All of Am Yisrael could experience this surrender of Hashem is taking care of me and Hashem is holding me through this challenge, through this incredible challenge. And the more we can, all of us at the same time, surrender and really make space for that, we are so much stronger. We are so much more humble. We are so much more empowered. And we're strengthening our trust in the Eibishter to carry us through this. And again, kind of bringing in this example, the more we can do this on a individual level, outside of challenges, the more we can grow that in tiny increments, and then finally apply that to our specific challenges and then our collective challenges on a whole. So I just want to give everybody a bracha to be able to really experience that surrender on a deep level, on an introspective space. And we should experience the ultimate surrender, which is a complete negation of self, a complete negation of ego, where we would just see the Eibishter clearly with our eyes, have complete clarity, and that will be when Mashiach comes. The more we grow that clarity, the more we're bringing Mashiach. So, hatzlacha, and it's beautiful to be a part of a group who puts in the effort to come to Ashir and to work on themselves and to apply themselves in Avodas Hashem. And I will just say for myself, I feel the support of you and the people who are online here. It's so beautiful to be a part of that. And I'm feeling the strength and the support of being a part of a group like this. And I just want to make a shout out to Mayin Yisrael. So special to have an organization, a shul, a community that does that and creates that. And we should all take that in and receive that and surrender to it. You're welcome. You did good things.